Welcome, everybody. My name is Gretchen Grozier. I'm from the JP Historical Society. We are so excited to be presenting a presentation to you today from the Boston Women's Heritage Trail. But because I have a captive audience in the room and on Zoom, I wanted to tell you about our upcoming events. So this month is Women's History Month. So we've got the Boston Women's Heritage Trail. There is also an event here at the JP Branch Library by the Women's International League of Peace and Freedom, which was founded by a woman named Emily Green Balch, who was a JP native. That will be on the 29th. So 2 Saturdays from now. Wow, this month is flying by. So we're co-sponsoring that. They're going to have a couple speakers and a video about women who won the Nobel Peace Prize, which Emily Green Balch did. Sort of a timely event. So sort of what can they teach us today about working for world peace? So we hope you'll join us in a couple weekends for that. Also next month, we have a talk on another woman who wrote a letter in April. Well, she wrote it in June of 1775 about the events she witnessed in Jamaica Plain in April of 1775. She and her family fled downtown Boston because of the British occupation there to beautiful Jamaica Plain. And then she wrote about seeing the Minutemen muster and leave the 3rd Parish of Roxbury for the battle at Lexington and Concord. She was also an enslaver, and there's quite a lot in her letters about a woman named Lucinda who was enslaved by her. So we're hopeful that that's going to be part of the presentation too. So it'll be fascinating. That is April 28th at the Conley Branch Library, so our other branch library here in Jamaica Plain. Details on our website. And then on May the 4th, we will have a talk up at Allendale Farm, which is mostly in Brookline, but a bit of it is in Boston, in Jamaica Plain. And we're going to talk about the history of that. That's the only working farm in Boston, and it's got a very long history, and they're going to present at Allendale Farm on that history. So look again on our website. If you want to get details of all the things we're doing, you can sign up for our newsletter. There's a sign-in sheet for those in the room, or online. You can go to our website. And you can also become a member in the room or online. And we would love to have you. If you're not a member of the Historical Society, it's only $15. Everything that we do is free and open to the public. So being our members are what support that process. All right, without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our speaker for today. Her name is, happily I have a cheat sheet, Ferna Phillips. She is a PhD, and she's been involved with the Boston Women's Heritage Trail since 2010. She's a native Bostonian. She's extremely interested in local history, which I think we all are being here today. She's assisted on guiding tours. She has found new facts about the city of Boston. She's been in higher ed for 30 years. She's currently the director of student accessibility services for Fisher College. She's been a vocational counselor at the Center for Career Development and Ministry, and was also director of the Office of Learning Services for Student Athletes at Boston College. And then there's quite a bit more in her resume. I will not read it all because we'd be here all day, but it is pretty impressive. But for our purposes, she has been with the Boston Women's Heritage Trail, the BWHT, for quite some time. She is going to let us know what they're up to, what they've been up to, what they're currently up to, and what they're planning for the future. And I know there are several other BWHT folks in the room. So thank you for your service on this on behalf of Women's History, and hopefully maybe we'll hear from some of you as well. So without further ado, Ferna Phillips.
Excuse me. I have a bit of a, I call it a vocal thing every now and again, so I have to clear my voice and make sure that it's accessible for you all. Thank you very much for being here this morning. In addition, I'm going to say I'm pitch hitting. I'm used to doing presentations, but this is the first time I've actually went through this one. So I will try my best to, what do you call it? Keep it in a time frame. I'm not sure if it's easier for you to ask me questions or wait to the end of the presentation. So we're just going to wing that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Does that work better? Yes, thank you. I was like saying, where's the mic? All right. I want to make sure that I do introduce the 2 other women that are in the room this morning. Laura Patterson, who serves on governance committee with me, is over here, and Alma Wright, who is on a variety of things for the things. She's the person responsible for me joining Boston Women's Heritage Trail. I'm going to just ask. I'm going to hit the. You got the clicker. Okay, that's what it is. Oh, that's what that noise was. I was like trying to figure out what it was. Good thing I asked.
Yeah. Bear with us.
Yep. Something technology always.
You keep working, I'll try and fix it.
Okay, so I'm going to begin the presentation, tell you a little bit about us, all right? The Boston Women's Heritage Trail was formed in 1989 when a group of Boston public school teachers, librarians, and their students brainstormed and inaugurated the Boston Women's Heritage Trail. BWHT, as we fondly like to refer to it as, is the first women's heritage trail in the country. Our focus is on celebrate and amplify, excuse me, and it honors and shares women's stories whose outstanding achievements have deeply shaped Boston's history, culture, and identity. It to inspire curiosity and action, and to inspire innovative and inclusive approaches for storytelling and public memory, walking trails, digital trails, public art trails, markers, educational resources, engagement with classrooms and students, and much more. Excuse me. If I hit the red button, it'll move.
Just saying, I can get it. There you go.
Okay. What you're seeing on the screen is a copy of our I'll call it our guidebook in one sense, but it's also become our holy grail for a lot of things. It's probably, it needs to be updated in one sense, but it's probably available through Amazon. And what is next to it is a young lady who probably, if I'm remembering correctly, this was back in, I'm going to say the early 90s, when the students in various schools in Boston had, again, like the programs put together for saluting women. I'm not sure if it goes further into the program, but I'm going to say that a lot of the things that were done with regards to the education of people in the city of Boston around Boston Women's Heritage Trail. This one?
No, just I'm trying to
Oh,
get to
okay.
your face.
Was indeed done by a lot of school children. And I think it's probably later in the slides, but I'm going to mention it now. There was a young lady who's now the granddaughter of one of our members, and they took them on a walking tour in the city, and she very politely said, "You showed me all these guys, where are the women?" And so from that became kind of like the germ and the continuation of having women in different places. Oh, go ahead. Yeah. So these are some documents that have been over the past number of years that have to do with the Boston Women's Heritage Trail. I think probably we're gonna again go through them, but as it says, the guidebooks, Susan Wilson created a walking, actually for the historic women, the celebration of women's suffrage. She created a pamphlet that I don't have copies of, I apologize, that has all the different historical sites in Boston and around, some are from Cambridge as well, but it's really about the different places where women have been involved with all of the issues that I'm just going to say we're currently facing even, okay? Next, yep. So in this picture, a couple of these people may look familiar to you. One, I think, is a younger Mary Smoyer, if I'm not correct. And the other one on the left would be Sylvia McDowell, who I didn't have the pleasure of meeting when she was alive, but they're some of the original founders of Boston Women's Heritage Trail. And again, these are some of the materials that are used. I'm going to just highlight, for example, one of the people who was a mentor of mine is Muriel Snowden, who's the second from the left top shelf there. And obviously the Snowden High School downtown Boston, but she and her husband Otto were responsible for the Freedom House, which is in Roxbury. And when I worked at Boston College originally, my first job there was as a financial aid officer. They held meetings, and we, as we'll call them administrators from around the city, got together in terms of issues that we are facing again and continuously facing today. Then in terms of the booklet, that I think was the first one that was done by, and Alma or Laura, you might know, the first one that was done by one of the schools. that gonna work? Okay. Technical things are working, all right? And then see, so then, and then the next slide, I guess. Again, this is the Boston Women's Health, this is the pamphlet I spoke of in terms of Susan Wilson that put that together. And the Road to the Vote, the Boston Women's Suffrage Trail. Okay, let's see, might ask for some help here, but this looks like, this is the group of school students from the charter school, maybe? No? Okay, so in various places around the city, I just know that it says, I think it just says BWHT, but these are a group of students that are probably, parents of children that are in the Boston Public Schools at this point, because it's probably back from the early 90s. And our next slide, that's from the Harvard Kent History, Her Story, the Real Story. Again, this was Remembering the Ladies is a theme that has to do with the Women's Memorial, which I'll speak about in a little bit. That's downtown Boston. And again, this is another group of students that were participants. And is this that recent thing that was here in JP? Laura, do you know?
Down at
The school there was a,
right down the street.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that these are a group of young women that are part of a class that we're studying, I'll call it women in terms of the Boston Women's Heritage Trail as well. And they came together because their school is named after Hispanic Latino women. You found the button? Okay. Aha. So now this would be our charter school. And this is actually a class for that Mary Smoyer, Elma Wright, Mary Smoyer were both teaching at the Roxbury, the charter school. And they decided to do a Roxbury Women's Trail. And that's the origins of the Roxbury Women's Trail in our amongst the 14 trails that are now available online as well. My apologies. In terms of the Roxbury Trail, these students set out during, and do you remember how long it took you all to do that?
Because basically the entire school. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. That's the entire school year. Can you stand up? Yes, I can. And the other, the first one, I think the Harvard Kent, they were one of the first schools to do, two teachers, usually there were two teachers who worked together with the trails. And Mary and I worked together at the trotter. As a matter of fact, I couldn't find my shirt. And we worked with these were first and second grade.
So,
But
I
we
don't-
invited fifth graders to try to move up to the fifth grade, would come down and make notes. Because what we did, we interviewed people from the neighborhood. Or if, for example, Miss Cass wasn't alive and interviewed her son. And the fifth graders would take the notes when we actually had a little booklet. Oh, there was a booklet.
Stepping back.
And they would take the notes for the booklet. And I think one of the things, and then our students, the first and second grade would do the illustration. And when we did the one about the hospital.
Oh, Dimmock?
The doctor.
Dr. Zach?
Yes, Dr. Zach. That illustration was a lady on a bed and she was expecting. It was everybody could see that they remembered Dr. Zach. So I actually, we invited people in, or the Mary would actually dress up as that person and the students would ask her questions. And that in most of the other schools, I know the Harvard Kent, they would have people to come in and the students would interview.
Next slide. Similar. They're actually holding a picture of Muriel Snowden as well. Sure. Sorry. Can you hear me now? Better? Okay. The students, this is just a continuation of the stepping back in terms of the Roxbury Women's History Trail. This is something that's probably near and dear to some of you. I'm not sure which school this is, but it is here in JP, the 19th century JP women. Next slide. These look like, again, in terms of it being either Boston Back Bay or women here in JP. Gretchen, I'm noticing that I can't do it, but I noticed there are 11 messages in the chat. So are you able to? Okay, thank you. All right, next slide. Okay, this is down, no, actually, this is Elm Hill Park. This is Fern Cunningham. Not sure if any of you have heard of her, but she's deceased now, but she's a renowned sculptress. And she's the person who, that's her statue that's in Elm Hill Park. She has another one down in the south end that's, is it Harriet Tubman? That's the other one that's down in the south end. Okay, somewhere around Clarendon Street. But this is the Elm Hill Park. Actually, the neighbors that lived in Elm Hill Park commissioned her to do this for them. And those are obviously some children from the nearby schools. And over in the right-hand corner from me, there's a little bit of gray hair sticking out. That would be Mary Smoyer. This is downtown at the Women's Memorial. And this is I'm going to call it probably the first year, because these faces are not known to me, and I don't, they were part of the organization before I joined. But at any rate, the Women's Memorial was dedicated, and I think you all know there were 3 statues. There's Abigail Adams, Phyllis Wheatley, excuse me. So if you go to the next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What was the statue before this one? What was that of? This one?
This here.
Yeah. Can you just repeat the question because people won't.
Oh, the question from the floor is, what is the statue that's there? I don't know the name of it. I can find out for you.
Called families. It was a family hugging, because then we would take, what would happen? Students from the Harvard Kent would come to the product, and we would take them on our tour. And we went to the Harvard Kent and went on their tour. So when we went to the statue, the kids would pretend they were a family and hug, because that statue's actually. So that was really nice to see all the kids hugging. What was the name of the artist?
Fern Cunningham. Yeah. People like to try to shorten my name, but my name is Ferna.
At the Timothy School.
Okay.
Park. I think that's where it is.
Okay. Did I see a hand in the back of the room? No. Another question? Go ahead. Next slide. So this is called About Face, and this was a contest that took place at the, well, actually, I think we just sponsored it. It was throughout the city. And if I can scroll down a little down the bottom, it'll tell you the dates and what oh, okay. All right, it got cut off. So, there it is in the middle. It says that this contest is open to all Boston Public School students. They would receive $100 for doing it. And we sponsored it. But again, I think this is, like, as I said, very early to mid 90s. Next slide. So now we have, these are down, one of the things that were the fruits of our labor is the fact that there are plaques around the city that denote women in history. So this is a plaque denoting Phyllis Wheatley, which I believe is on Beacon Hill, and then Amy Beach. And this is for women's suffrage, which was in 2018, I think it was. I'm just trying to put a time for you in terms of this picture. And obviously people dressed in the period in terms of the costumes. Next slide. Okay, this one I can speak to. This was in October of 2019, and the person in the middle is me playing. Mary Smoyers to the left, Karen Green is next to her. Mary's last name is on the right-hand side, and then Cheryl Brown Green. We were playing women of the times, and so we're friends and relatives of Abigail Adams. And we did this at the Quincy Public Library. Next slide. Now, this is in terms of this, as it says here, there's waterfront signage, Women of the Brook Farm. These are some of the people that we've paired with and or serve as sponsors in some cases. But this is in 2018. I thought about it yesterday, or actually on Thursday, when I looked at it to say, like, I wonder how we haven't increased by many, but the focus was the fact that in terms of naming the schools in Boston, out of the 120, in terms of this article, there were 125 Boston public schools, but only 10 of them were named after women, okay? And as it says here, that for the men, there were 75, some are named after ships and other things like that. But I know that we have increased the number, but it's not by much, it's maybe 5, if I think correctly, okay? And as I said, these are some of the people that the organizations we've partnered with throughout the years that we've done things with. Next slide. Okay, let's see. So this is Fern Cunningham's statue down in the South End. Okay. And again, these are students that were at various schools, and they came together and they went on the tour for this. Next slide. If I'm not mistaken, this is actually the mural, one of the murals that's in the State House. No, actually, no, this is the one that's in the library. Was in the Boston Public Library, okay? And it used to hang when the library was first renovated. When you first walked in, it was like above the check-in and checking out information downtown Copley. This mural actually got moved to Simmons College, and it stayed at Simmons College for, correct me if I'm wrong, at least 10 to 15 years. And then it disappeared. Okay. And so people were saying, like, where is the mural? What happened? Well, it was found, relocated, I guess, and being relocated. And it was found somewhere on the grounds of Simmons College, I believe. But it was supposed to be moved back to the Boston Public Library. Instead, it's going to be in the State House, correct? Somewhere in the State House, okay? So that's a project that's ongoing and currently occurring, and hopefully to be updated to say that it has been moved to the State House.
What is it on?
Oh, various women in the city of Boston. I want to say I can't read all the things down the bottom. Thank you. Right. Melania Cass Boulevard is named after her. She's on the very far right. I'm trying to see. That was I think Dr. Beck, the woman with the baby on her lap. And if you can read some of that, you're good. Just kidding. I have it in front of me. It's like really kind of blurred too, but so next slide. This is actually in the State House on the second floor. And these are all women that have held some part in in our history, I'll say, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but particularly in the city of Boston. So if you haven't been to the State House has been incorporating a lot of different artifacts and whatnot that have to do with women in history. An ongoing project, and that's go ahead. Next slide. And that is the Women's Memorial there. Remembering the ladies, obviously, Abigail Adams bywords. All right, trick question. Who's the person on the left? Who's on the left? Tell me, Laura. Go ahead. Right. Okay. So the woman on the left is Lucy Stone. And have you heard how are you familiar with the term called stoners? Okay. So a stoner was someone, Lucy was married, and Lucy refused to take her husband's name. And so they were called stoners. And so for a period in our history, I'm going to say probably from the late 60s, early 70s, I think, but definitely the 70s, women were whatever their maiden name was, and they didn't necessarily take their husband's name. So those people were called stoners, and Lucy was famous for that. Then you know that in terms of Abigail Adams, Abigail used to write to her husband and say, of all the things that are happening, you got to remember the ladies. And then obviously to the right is Phyllis Wheatley, which
Was her husband's name Blackwell?
No, he was John Adams.
No, Lucy.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes. Next slide. And then this is the ladies walk. This is the cover of the, I'll call it the information, one of the things that Susan Wilson did on our behalf, because the ladies walk encompasses a lot of things that are in and around Back Bay, meaning like this is in the middle of Commonwealth Avenue, but it's Exeter and it's the E and the D, Dartmouth, in terms of the streets. And so there are a number of, we'll call them places that are named after, or that where women lived and worked. And that's part of the ladies walk. And then these two young people over here were just imitating what was going on. Now, in 2022, right, because we did this in 23, Meredith Bergman is actually the sculptor of the Women's Memorial. However, one of the projects that we did as Boston Women's Heritage Trail was to make them accessible. And so now they are talking statues. And so the talking statues are the voices of Michelle Wu, Andrea Campbell, and Ayanna Presley. And when you, as you can see in terms of the Braille, but when you do the SQR code, you'll hear the voice of Michelle Wu, Ayanna Presley, or Andrea Campbell at the statue. Next slide. So here's the information about it. This was launched in 2003, and the project added a plaque with a QR code to the statues, which links to recordings of readings by the three women represented. So Abigail Adams, Lucy Stone, and Phyllis Wheatley. And as you see in terms of the slide, Lucy Stone is Mayor Wu, Andrea Campbell is Abigail Adams, and Phyllis Wheatley is Ayanna Presley. You can't see me, but I'm to the left of Michelle Wu's head. I got cut out the picture. But this is Susan Wilson that's on the left side of Michelle Wu, and that's Mrs. Mayor Flynn's wife. Her name just went right out of my head, Mary. Okay. And then to the, let's call it to our left, I guess, would be Maria Dietria. Diana Lam is our president, that she's on in the kind of burnt orange thing. And so these are all members of BWHT in 2023. Okay. This is one of the pictures you saw a few minutes ago, the sidewalk stories. I think this is where I'm probably supposed to digress to say that in end of 2023, we were adopted, is the way I like to say it, in terms of the Shaw Foundation. And so the Shaw Foundation partnered with us and continues to partner with us, and has been doing so for, as of June, would be 18 months, to help us reorganize, recreate, everything about BWHT, okay? And so one of the projects that they came up with was the reimagining was how to memorialize women. And the sidewalk stories are, they're stickers, for lack of a better term, but they're stickers that would be either on the streets, and so that's basically in terms of the school here in JP, the Margarita Muniz Academy. They're outside that school. They're downtown Boston on Newbury Street, and excuse me, and in Dorchester and at the Codman Square Library. And what it does is, let me just read it and say, the new initiative brings history to the streets, making the stories of remarkable women more visible and engaging. Passerbys can actively engage with the stories of the women in their neighborhoods through the QR codes. So the launch sites were, as it said, Jamaica Plain, and they partnered with a group of 11th grade students. There were 10 teenage girls and their teacher. They learned about the women in advance of the event and attended a mini tour and placed the sidewalk markers. And then, as it says, the collaboration was especially meaningful as the school is named after Margarita Muniz, one of the women honored with a sidewalk marker. And then in Dorchester at the Codman Square Library, they had a pop-up event, which is a multi-generational event, and was at the library. And again, in terms of it, there were lots of children as well. I think it's always the thing about touching and seeing. Next slide. This is our, what do you call it, one of our most engaging projects. We've just, I want to say, been doing the past for 6 months. And at the Cedar Grove Cemetery, it's a combination project. The Home for Aged Colored Women was located on Myrtle Street up on the Beacon Hill. And in Cedar Grove Cemetery, which is actually, it's Dorchester for me, but I guess it's Dorchester. I was going to say Mattapian line, but it's Dorchester. In terms of it, there are 130 women, unnamed Black women in the cemetery. And her name escapes me at the moment, but there was a woman who kind of would walk past like everything that happened. Somebody's walking by and it's like saying, she would see this unmarked grave and say like, what is that all about? Why is it, why is it an unmarked grave? So long story short, a few conversations later, the idea being, let's see if we can name the women that are in this 130 women buried in the same plot per se, at the cemetery. So through the collaboration with the community researchers and artists, Equa Homes, we're going to blend the historical inquiry in art to create a public narrative that fosters engagement, equity, and education. And as it says here, the Home for the Aged Colored Women, which is at 27 Myrtle Street, was founded in 1860 by a group of abolitionists, both Black and white, to provide support to elderly African-American women in need of housing and or financial aid. The home arranged for burials at Cedar Grove Cemetery in 2 unmarked communal graves. And in 1989, the home was added as one of the inaugural landmarks to the first trail created by us. And then in 2021, local neighbors sought to recognize these women. And so MIT has uncovered their names, and records are revealing glimpses of their lives, including health, friendship, and daily habits. I'm not 100% positive, but I think we have been given at least one grant, and the other grant is in the works for the students at MIT, and the professor's name is Dr. Carolyn Crocker, to indeed, as I said, do the research to uncover some pieces of or some historical parts of these women, so what they did and how they contributed, etc. Next slide. It's more about this, and this is just a timeline. So in terms of 2023, the research began to uncover the names. In 2024, the partnership between the Friends of Cedar Grove, and BWHT. And now we're in phase 1, continuing to do the research. And in 2026, there'll be a memorial eventually that will be, I want to say, created and obviously placed in the cemetery. Next slide. Maybe that's it. Nope, that's it. Can't get any more. So that's a little brief history of Boston Women's Heritage Trail. I'm sure there are some other questions that people have, and I know that there are a lot of things in the chat. So I'll open it up for questions at this point. Stand over here by the mic. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was wondering, was this building torn down during the big urban renewal of the West End?
It's on Beacon Hills. I don't think
It's
so.
on-
It's
okay.
Myrtle Street is up the top of Beacon
It's
Hill.
the top revenue over there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So the building's not there anymore. Or is it?
I think the building is still there. It's just that it's, what do you call it? It probably someone's home. A funny side story with regards to that. I supervise students who are communications majors, and they were doing internships. And one of the women that was part of my group went, I think it's 57 Myrtle Street, but it was for a different purpose. And she was outside taking pictures of it for her project. And the owners of the house came out, was like, what are you doing? type of thing. So she explained what she was doing. And they invited her in so that she could see some of the historical stuff. She was amazed that in terms of the house, that it still has parts of the Underground Railroad and where they hid them. And the fireplace actually had a little, we'll call it box underneath of it where they used to keep the guns. And she was just amazed. I said, see, you learn all kinds of things. I did too. Anybody else have a question?
A couple online.
Sure.
And if you could repeat them for the people online. So does Julia Ward Howe figure in the Boston Women's Heritage Trail?
Interesting. But the question is, does Julia Ward Howe figure into the Boston Women's Heritage Trail? I'd have to look that up, but I would have to tell you, I'm dating myself. When I was in the middle school, I used to have to walk past the Julia Ward Howe every day on my way to the Lewis Middle School. So I would tend to think that she's probably somewhere in our history. I just don't know where the school was actually located on Dale Street. Next question. Okay. Say again.
Say questions in the.
Oh, if you have questions, I'm being told to tell you to put them in the chat. Thank you. let me just look quick and see. You have a question? Since I have the,
She is in one of our trails. one of the Billy Wood House.
yeah, she would probably be part of the, yeah,
Where you went.
yeah, downtown Boston. Go ahead,
Another question.
no problem.
So you mentioned the house that has the,
Yeah.
old vestiges of the Underground Railway.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of tour that you know of that Beacon Hill
Yes,
or that delves into that history?
we have one,
You
but
do?
there are also the Black Heritage, not tooting anyone else's horn, but the Boston by Foot, as well as the Black Heritage Trail will all do stuff on that.
Oh,
Okay, yeah.
Okay, does it actually go into homes?
Probably not. They would go into the museum, like, for example, the Museum of African American History on Joy Street, probably would do that because that's available. There is, the name of it escapes me, but there's a Jewish temple or a Jewish community center on the top of Beacon Hill that you could go into, that is part of it as well. Trying to think, I'm going down the hill. Mary and I did a tour back in the fall with a group of students from, Maine, actually. And that was their focus. They wanted to know all the stuff that was in Beacon Hill. So we were right behind the State House, and that was the question. It was like saying, well, if it's a historical site and it's not someone's home, you certainly can't go in and see stuff. Yes.
You mentioned the Shaw Foundation helped you with the discs on the sidewalk. I never heard of the Shaw Foundation. Is that a Boston?
Yes, it is. But it's located at 276 Newberry Street. And their focus is about well, it's really in terms of an educational focus. So they've done a lot of things with, we'll call them Boston Public Schools and other ventures outside of the city of Boston, but primarily city. And we ended up having conversation. It's like everything else in the city of Boston. It wasn't me personally, but I just happened to be having coffee with Mary Smith or whoever was it, like somebody connected to the Shaw Foundation. And from that came a conversation to say, how about we do this? And the next thing you know is like, it's a project and it's a work in progress, and we continue to work with them. I was careful not to name many names, okay, but but it does exist, yes. Yes, ma'am.
So much a question, but Brookline has done extensive research and has a tour of the sites in Brookline that have turned on.
Yes.
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 Shaw Foundation is way there.
Yeah, I was trying to be cautious and not name names, so to speak, but it is it's funded per se by Wayfair. Yeah, I should spell, it's SHAH, right? The Shaw Foundation, okay? And the founder of Wayfair is chairman of the board. I was going to say, in terms of your question about Brookline, we always try to say her name, it is Florida Ruffin. And there's a lot of history that's been done around her from the city of Brookline, town of Brookline, actually still, huh? Anybody else?
Question.
Sure.
The temporary markers on the sidewalk or those stickers, is there any idea to try to make that more permanent, or how long will those stay? Do you know?
What did Sarah tell me? Sam said they're gonna last for at least, I think, 12 months. Okay, the material they are made out of is such that, wear and tear, if it isn't walked on or stepped on, it would last a long time. But I think it's designed probably for at least a year. Okay, and there are plans to do them in other parts of the city, because one of the things we found out by doing that is that you don't need anyone's permission. You don't need city, you don't need state, you can just do it. Okay, so there are some things that we can do, anybody can do for that matter, in the city of Boston, because you don't have to get permission and by bylaws this and changing that. Yes, ma'am.
About the school's name for women, and so we have the Ruth Batson Academy that was just renamed for this year, and then we have the Sarah Roberts, which is set to be moving, I think, for next year. And the students do a really wonderful job, like the students propose and then the school committee gets to elect, but they do a really wonderful job of deciding what they want to propose to the school committee. So, I would love to bring y'all over there, to talk to those students about,
Sure.
where it may have come up. Because they don't know who those folks are. but-
Right. Two comments to make. One is to say that I'm gonna, and Alma, you correct me when it might have happened. I think it used to be such an involvement with the public schools in terms of curriculum and involvement. And it kind of fell off based on maybe who was the superintendent at the time. I'm not really sure, but it's been at least 10 years, okay, whereby, so one of the projects that we have is the renewed, I'll call it, attention to getting back into the public schools and working with the teachers around curriculum, et cetera. And then my second comment is to say that somebody else asked me, and I don't have the answer to this, but I don't know if charter schools are considered Boston public schools per se. I think there's a little whatever, but my point is that a charter school was named after Helen Davis. Helen Davis was the sole owner for a good 20, 40, 25 years at least, of the Davis Funeral Home in Roxbury. And she's part of the Roxbury Trail. But the Helen Davis Academy was over in Upham's Corner. And the school has been since closed, so the name has been lost. Any other comments? Go ahead.
This is not a comment, it's just sort of a notification.
Yeah.
People may have heard that Civic Community Health is in pretty severe financial trouble. Considering the fact that that is such an important site for women in this community and the nation, actually. Anything we can do to help support them in any way, either emotionally or financially, I think is something that's very critical to do at this time. So that just came out last night.
Yes, for those of you on Zoom, a comment from the floor was the fact that we just heard, I actually heard it this morning on the radio, but it's on the news last evening that Dimmock Community Health Center has laid off, I think it's 21 people, but because of its such significance and importance to the community, obviously in terms of the Boston Women's Heritage Trail, it's Susan Dimmock. But whatever could be done to help in terms of anything probably at this point to see that obviously the center itself doesn't close, but again, everything is to be determined at this point. Yeah, I know, that's forgetting. I will make this comment for one of the other things is as a future of Boston Women's Heritage Trail. As I said, we reorganized, we've done a lot of things to help imagine ourselves. And one of the things that or image ourselves, is the fact that as of Monday, right? As of Monday, we have hired an executive director, and her name is Dr. Alexandria Russell. And she is what's known as she doesn't have to be here in the state, but it's an out of residence researcher from Harvard University. But she comes to us she was, I guess I'll call it a student, et cetera. She's been in Boston for a while, but she was in South Carolina, and she's doing parallel work. She actually wrote a book that just got published, but doing parallel work around women in South Carolina.